What up, and greetings. Welcome to another Hearthstone review. Okay, first of all, guys, I do want to apologize for not uploading this review earlier, but last week was super busy for me, and I'm still figuring this thing out. You gotta bear with me, this is not my full-time job, and my videos are just not gonna come out on the same day the cards are released. That's just not gonna happen. I am sorry. First three cards that I'll be discussing today are all minions. They're minions that synergize with Cthulhu. What that means is they either buff him before he comes into play, or they get buffed if he reaches a certain attack value. First of these cards, it's a druid-specific card called Klaxxi Amber-Weaver. It's a minion for 4 mana for 5 with an upside. So, oh my god, it's power creep so much better than Chillwing Yeti, but it's not because it's a class specific card. The battle cry, what it does, if your Cthulhu has at least 10 attack, it gains +5 health. So this card is borderline insane. The reason why I think that is because it has no downside for the effect. I mean, it's a Yeti stats minion. You can drop it on turn 4, and there's nothing wrong with dropping a Yeti on turn 4 in Druid. I mean, I remember the times when Druids were playing Yetis across the ladder, but it has the potential to become a 4/10 on turn 4. Just imagine this scenario. So you play turn 1, Coin the Beckoner of Evil, turn 2, Beckoner of Evil, turn 3, Brand Bronzebeard, turn 4, 4/15. Anyone? I mean, you can pretty much use this minion to trade into other minions for the rest of the game. You don't even want to silence it because it's not like a Twilight Drake that just becomes a 4/1 and you can ping it. It's still a 4/5. I mean, this card is nuts. This card also sort of feels like a ramp card, but I'm not too sure if Cthulhu decks are going to be ramped. The problem that ramp usually has is that it dies to Smork too often. You know, you can have a 4/10 or 4/15 how much you want, but unless you draw into swipes and into your living roots, you're still going to die pretty much every time. The reason why Druid of the Claw is played so much is because it gives you the option of being a 4/6 with Taunt that absorbs those 6 damage, or you can combine it with Savage Roar to deal 6 extra damage in that turn that you need to kill your opponent. With that being said, the success of this card, along with any Cthulhu Druid archetype, will heavily depend on which cards Blizzard decides to nerf before the expansion rolls out, because as they said, Druid is their biggest gripe with having almost 20 cards that are included in pretty much every Druid deck out there. So we're going to see more or less of Klaxxi, depending on if we're going to see more or less of Savage Roar. I'm definitely excited to see this guy around. I hope I'm not going to regret saying this, but yeah, I'd prefer getting killed by something else than roar. Second card that we're going to be talking about today is called Ancient Shieldbearer. It's a warrior card. 7 mana for a 6/6 body, so like Troxor or newly shown Hogger, Scourge of Elwyn. Like Klaxxi, the battle cry that he has only works if your Cthulhu has 10 or more attack. In this case, it's going to give you 10 armor. Like the Amber-Weaver, it's also a rare card, which I'm quite happy about. At least it's not going to be popping up too much in Arena. Those cards, especially this one that works only when Cthulhu has 10 or more attack, is going to be a miracle if you can ever pull it in Arena. And yeah, I'd take War Golem over this minion any day of the week. I would say the most direct comparison to this card is the Shield Maiden, which is a 5/5 for 6 mana, and it gives you 5 armor, so half of the armor, which you might think is bad compared to this, but because it gives you the armor consistently and every single time, what you can do with the Shield Maiden is play it on turn 7 and then Shield Slam something for 5 instantly, which is usually enough to kill it. But with the Shieldbearer, I'm not too keen on the way that the card looks, just because I think it's slightly understated. I think it could afford being a 6/7 or maybe even a 6/8, dare I say, because it's a class card, and I think these can be slightly stronger. I don't think that it will be played, just because if you look at the Klaxxi, it is a 4/5 for 4 mana, which is completely fine. It's not taken off any stats for what it does for the battle cry. You know, if it was a 3/5, then it would be a different story. With the Ancient Shieldbearer, it's very understated. You know, for 7 mana, you would expect a 7/8. As a class card, yeah, You would expect something as a 6-8 or a 7-8, 7-9 vanilla, but it's only a 6-6, so the effect better be good. And if the effect only works out if you put minions that buff Cthulhu in your deck and you play those minions before you play the Ancient Shieldbearer, is it really that great? I'm not really too keen. I think just like with Joust, when you had minions that, by itself, they were pretty good. If you take a look at King's Alec, it's a free 2. It's not taking off any stats. You could see King's Alec played. Or if you take a look at something like Tusker Jouster, arguably it wasn't played too much, but it's only really missing one stat from something like a Pit Fighter. So I think this card is missing too much stats for what it does, but I might be surprised. Cthulhu Warrior could be the next big thing. I don't know. We've only seen like less than 20 cards, so we just have to wait and see until more of them are revealed. As the third card, we have our first and the only neutral card on the list today, Cthun Showzen. That's a 4 mana, 4/2 with Divine Shield and Battle Cry. Give your Cthulhu +2/+2 wherever it is. As a 4 mana, 4/2 with Divine Shield, you could say it's an Argent Commander without charge, or a Silver Moon Guardian with a different stat distribution, or a Scarlet Crusader. For 1 more mana, you get 1 extra attack and health. However, it also has identical effect to Beckoner of Evil, in that it gives +2/+2 to your Cthulhu when it's played. So at first I thought this card was quite bad because of the distribution of the stats and the fact that you can just ping it and kill it with something like Abusive Sergeant. However, if it's played against a class that cannot ping it instantly, then it can become a real problem, in the sense that it probably has to sacrifice a charge of a weapon, a spell, or a minion to get rid of the Divine Shield, and then attack it with another minion to kill it, and you've still buffed your Cthulhu in your deck or in play by +2/+2. Overall, the rule with Divine Shield is that the attack is much more important than the health is. So if you look at something like the Silver Moon Guardian, it being a free is actually a lot worse than Cthulhu Showzen being a 4/2. If you take a look at something like a Scarlet Crusader, it being a 1 free would suck terribly, but it being a free 1 is actually incredibly good in Arena, because you can trade with 2 free 2s or 2 frees if the opponent doesn't have a ping, and that's insane value. But if it was a 1 free, you could barely trade with anything. Overall, not too impressed by this card. I started liking it a bit more when I thought about it a bit in depth, but I think having already one card with exactly the same effect, this one has Divine Shield and slightly different stat line, but it's pretty much the same thing. I don't know. I don't want to repeat 100 times that we have to wait and see until more cards are revealed, but that's just what we have to do. The next trio of cards that I will be touching upon today are all forbidden spells. And the way that it looks now is Blizzard is making a forbidden version of the spell for every single class. These forbidden spells all cost 0 mana, but they're gonna use up all your remaining mana and do scalable effect depending on what class you're playing. So let's start with the one that is probably the most boring one, is a mage spell, of course, called Forbidden Flame. It spends all of your mana and it deals that much damage to a minion. So let's say you have 7 mana remaining on a turn, you have nothing else to play. You can spend that mana to deal 7 damage to a minion. That is quite bad. I mean, it is scalable, so you can decide how much mana you want to spend and in what situation, but you usually have to set the situation up. And you can't target face, so the damage that you can only target minions with is somewhat less valuable than the damage that you can also spend to damage face. If you compare it to something like a Flame Lance, it's even terrible compared to a Flame Lance, because that at least does 8 damage for 5 mana. I don't think that this card is great. Nah. Get out of here. On the other hand, the priest version of the forbidden spell is quite amazing. It's called Forbidden Shaping, and it spends all your mana and summons a random minion that costs that much. This card probably reminds you of 2 cards in particular. One of them is Mind Games, that summons a random minion from your opponent's deck. The other one is Unstable Portal, that gives you a random minion into your hand, but it costs 2 less. Now, Unstable Portal has the benefit that it works a lot better in Mage deck because Mage has Mana Worm, it has Flame Waker, it has Archmage Antonidas that benefit all from you playing more spells. But as Priest has very little tempo plays, I think this card is good because it can fill in a turn where you don't have a 2-drop, 3-drop, or a 4-drop. You know, Priest oftentimes, and I know this because I main Priest and it's the only class that I have 500 wins and a golden portrait from, is, you know, you're hoping to get that turn 1 Northshire Cleric, or you're hoping to get that turn 3 Injured Blade Master with Circle combo. But if you don't get that, all you have in your hand is reactive cards. And sometimes you just need to put something on the board so then you can heal it up or you can do something else because the only cards in your hands that you have are turn like 6, 7, you know, turn 9. So I think this card has a potential to be a real deal breaker in Tempo Priest. We've seen Dragon Priest has already almost rotated out of the meta. I mean, I've played maybe 2 games against Dragon Priest in the last month or so. But what I can't wait is to put this card inside my Randuin Rain deck. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Noxious, and I have my own altered version of the deck that he created. I'll post a link in the description below in case you don't know his channel. I can't wait until I can play this, you know, and copy it into my opponent's hand through Cho and yeah, just summon loads of random minions. You know, it's gonna be crazy. Turn 3 rag mind game style. Yeah, I can't wait. So I don't really care if this card is competitive. That's what I mean to say. I will still play it and I will enjoy it. The last card that we're going to be taking a look at today is a Paladin Forbidden card. It's called Forbidden Healing, and it spends all of your mana and restores health for twice that amount. Okay, first of all, before you say, this looks like a priest card. Yes, it does look like a priest card, but because you got Aukenau Soul Priest, it couldn't really be a priest card, because then it would just deal 20 damage to the face after priest already can do 10 damage with 2 flash heals, or potentially 20 damage through Velen double flash heal. So yeah, it wouldn't be a good card in priest, trust me. I don't think it's that great. I mean, it's probably gonna be infuriating to play against because I honestly loathe playing against anything can happen paladins because the game just draws out and then I think that I won and then I just lose terribly, you know, over time when he just completely destroys my board over and over again because I was too careful at the beginning and I should have overextended because he didn't have equality in hand, and then he draws into equality and he just kills me slowly, heals up, and this is going to give him another option. You know, healing for 20 is no joke. The only heal that heals more than 20 is Reno Jackson, and then you have to play a Highlander mode and that wouldn't work in anything can happen deck. So yeah, I think it might spring up a Healadin archetype possibly, but I've never seen that work on ladder quite consistently since maybe beta. So we might see something like that coming along. We have to see how many different tools the new cards will give us in order to heal up now that we're losing Endshield Healbot. And if the situation really gets out of hand with Forbidden Healing, I can always switch to my Priest and Thought Steal them and use that against the Paladin. Oh yeah. That's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. For future, I'm going to try to review those cards in smaller batches so I can go into a bit more detail. Things just piled up. I already have another video planned, which is going to be about the patch 4.2 that released on Monday, which I planned to do before this video, but then too many cards released, and now, you know, this one went on first. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more of this content coming up. And until next time, bye! Take care!